Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, here on the magnificent Monday edition of the Yard. A lot to talk about. Even though we hadn't had a lot to cheer about as of late, we've had some basketball stuff we're going to talk about. Got some recruiting stuff coming up too. It's crazy to think about. Right now, everybody's just kind of resting up a little bit and kind of getting their legs back under them, and we still got some spots to fill. Talked about that extensively last week on the show. So it's easy to say, wow, it's a great class. No, it's not a great class. It's a good class with the potential to be a really good class. And if we get some high-level transfers, could be a great class, especially for next year. That's the thing. It's like we've done a good job kind of addressing needs and kind of refilling the developmental pipeline. We've addressed some immediate needs at left tackle with Percy Lewis. Got another corner into Carlos Nicholson. But outside of that, there's not a lot of guys that make you a better football team next year. Now, and I think it's important to understand, too, like, we'll see what happens with some of these players on the roster. I continue to hear that Tyra Sweet's going to get his draft paperwork, get his evaluation. Hearing Mekhi Polk may get his evaluation. Now, I think it would be rather foolish to come out this year. Now, granted, I don't know those gentlemen's situation. You never know. This time last year, we were discussing Errol Thompson, Kobe Jones. Felt that both of them could have benefited from another year, but they elected to come out. Kobe Jones ended up making the practice squad with the Dolphins. Errol Thompson, of course, did not make it with the Falcons. And so, it's easy with the gift of hindsight to say, hey, those guys should have come back. And here's the deal. Like Errol Thompson kind of was what he was. Does he really benefit from coming back, or does he go out and take a chance and bet on himself? Doesn't appear that it worked out. But, I think Mississippi State played pretty well at linebacker this year. But how much better could we have been with an experienced guy like Errol Thompson out there calling the checks? Probably better earlier in the year, I suspect. Take a sure-handed tackler like that, a guy that's among the league leaders in the SEC each of his years he started at Mississippi State. So selfishly, it would have been good for us. But I don't know that Errol Thompson would have upped his stock as a prospect. Don't know that. I always believe you should come back, though. I believe you should, especially if you're a marginal guy. If you're a Charles Cross guy, it's like, well, he's projected first round. That guy's got to go, right? I mean, that's just – nobody blames him, and we all wish him the best, and we appreciate his contributions to Mississippi State football. I want to embarrass the gentleman that posted this, but I read some absolute nonsense in one of the Mississippi State Facebook groups today about how Mississippi State, should terminate his scholarship and delay his graduation. Well, first of all, school's out. Okay, so if we pulled the scholarship, which we wouldn't, he's not going to take any more classes. So he's done with all that. It's like, delay his graduation. Well, he hadn't been in school long enough to graduate, unless he was, just borderline genius. And Charles is a good student, but not on track to graduate in December. Graduation's already happened. It's like, Mississippi State's the only reason that, he's even, in the position he's in. No, that's not true. Genetics, hard work, talent, that's got a big hand in it too. Yes, Mississippi State provided him, with a venue to showcase his talents and chance to work with our staff and improve his game. There's no denying that. But it's been a partnership. It has been. To suggest that it's all about Mississippi State is to be short-sighted and to be a bit selfish. But again, I want to embarrass the gentleman that posted that. But I just wanted to comment on that because there is a silent minority out there that has, a lot of stuff, a lot of things to say that are not rooted in fact. There are some people that are often in error but never in doubt, and this is one of those situations. And so I used to just kind of ignore that sort of stuff, but I just think, if those are the only voices out there, if they remain unchallenged, then people, begin to kind of adopt those opinions, whether they're correct or not. And so I try to respond when I can, when I have time. Sometimes I don't have time, and I just let people kind of wallow in their own ignorance, But I think the reality of it is that I would say 99.9% of Mississippi State fans are just very grateful that Charles Cross came to Mississippi State, could have gone anywhere. Came to Mississippi State, sought to improve his standing in life as a Bulldog, and has contributed mightily to our football program. And that's the thing. When you get out there and fish in the deep water, to catch big fish, they don't always stay. And that's the reality of it. And just like we get back to recruiting, it's like I remember, the pearl clutching that went into the final 10 days of the recruiting process. And I share with you guys on this show, here's the deal. When you get out there and it gets thick late, there's going to be some ebb and flow. You can never get back-to-back good days the final 2 weeks of recruiting. It just doesn't work that way. Somebody's going to report this. Like, oh my gosh, DeCarlos Nicholson is going to visit Ole Miss instead of Mississippi State. And so people report that, and then everybody panics. Well, he didn't. He didn't visit Ole Miss. He visited Mississippi State. But at the time of that report, that was not good news for the Bulldogs. Now, ultimately, it ended up going well for us. But the reality of it is that, when you're out there chasing highly recruited players, there is going to be some up and down. So, you can go back, and I don't mean this disrespectfully to anybody, but you can go back and you can look at some of the later Sylvester Croom years. The last year, of course, the 2009 class, one of the best classes we ever signed. But, 06, 07, 08, I guess, it's a much different year. And so you could have these boring signing days where you're recruiting players that your competition doesn't want. So you go out there and get, G5 quality players, and, you're going to beat out Southern Miss and Memphis and Tulane and people like that just because of the fact you're in the SEC. But if you're chasing true SEC players, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. And you go back and look at last week, and you realize that, with the lone exception being Trent Ramsey, Mississippi State went head-to-head with a bunch of Power 5 schools and won, with rare exception. You go back and look at Calvin Dinkins, who was the MVP in the South half for the North-South game. Guy was unblockable. If you watched any of that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, all of a sudden, late in his recruitment, he gets Baylor. And I'll be honest with you, if Dave Aranda is offering a defensive player, I'm intrigued. I am. I begin to ask myself, wait a minute, where's our evaluation been? Well, we're chasing Jaheim Otis, right? And so you don't get Otis, and it's like, okay, we got to reshuffle the deck here, and let's go back and take a look here. So let's get on Calvin Dinkins. And then Florida offers him. And then your Mississippi State coaching staff does a great job locking that thing down. Florida wanted him to prolong the process and take a visit to Gainesville in January. Their pitch is, hey, we just got here. We recruited you at Louisiana. You know us. We think you could be a great Florida Gator. But instead, your staff does a good job getting that locked up. And so when you look in hindsight, you begin to realize, too, that there are a lot of guys out there you almost take for granted, and you realize what big recruiting wins they were. And so I share that because I think it's important to kind of put things in their proper context. Let's thank our good friends at Bulldog Burger Company. I'll eat there one day this week, maybe tomorrow. One day this week for sure. Maybe two. We'll see how things go. I love going in there. It's a great atmosphere. There's great service, great food, great portions for a great price. A lot of people out there charging you the same thing they were with pre-quarantine circumstances, but they've cut back on the portions. So you're getting less for your money than you were before. That's not the case at Bulldog Burger Company. I always leave fulfilled. I never leave wanting more. There are a lot of places you go. It's like you go, you pay your $10, $15, $20, whatever, and you eat. And you're like, an hour later, and you're like, man, I should have got something else. It's just not the case. Bulldog Burger Company. They know how to feed you. They'll get you full. Whether you get the BLT salad with grilled or fried chicken, or you get one of those great restaurant quality hamburgers. It's outstanding. Bulldog Burger Company is a great place to eat, a great place to work. Now, you're running out of time, so maybe if you're close to one of the three locations right here on University Drive, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, or the Lake Harbor Road location there in the Ridge and Flowwood area, go by and pick up a gift card for the burger fans in your life. There were probably some starving college students, perhaps a young couple, that maybe just kind of getting started out that could use a night out on you. It's a wonderful gesture. You can visit eatwithus.com. I can't guarantee you Christmas delivery if you don't, but you can go by one of those locations and pick up those cards. The recipients of those cards will be very grateful. It will be among the best gifts they get. Go check it out today. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. MEAT. All right. Couple talking points I want to get out here before we start talking basketball. The first thing is had some people reach out to me and say, hey, Steve, what's going on with the basketball boys, the ball boys on the basket? We hadn't had those. And what's going on with the Diamond Girls? And I say, hey, there's some talk. We're going to do away with the Diamond Girls. I have spoke to, let's say, people in charge, and we'll leave it there. That's not true. That's not true. Now, there is an SEC rule about certain support personnel that are deemed kind of non-essential on the playing surface. And so that is something that we're having to kind of navigate through. And there, I've actually heard from some parents of some former Diamond Girls and a couple of Diamond Girls themselves and said, hey, what's going on with the Diamond Girls? We're hearing that they're terminating the program. That's not true. Not true at all. Now, last year, you may recall the Diamond Girls were essentially greeters at Duty Noble Field. They weren't on the field. Eventually we'd like to get them back on the field. And a lot of that's going to depend on the SEC protocols and things of that nature. And who knows what's going on right now in the world. It's I know we're all kind of tired of dealing with all this. We have not dealt with it as some other states have. As I traveled throughout the college baseball season, it was basically different circumstances at every venue and state that I went into. Some places you go, you stop at a truck stop, and everybody's walking around with no mask on. And then 100 miles down the road, everybody's got a mask on. So it's a different situation in different parts of the country. But the reality of it is that's kind of how things are going. And there have been some talk about the media, basketball. We used to be able to sit on the baseline. And now the media has to kind of sit in the rafters. And it hadn't always been well received. But the days of the Mississippi State media sitting courtside at Humphrey Coliseum are over. Now, that was going to happen anyway. As we renovated Humphrey Coliseum, media seating probably going to go up around the mid-tier right there. They're going to have a little section for the media kind of carved out in the seats. Not going to be in the rafters, not going to be on the floor. So the days of that taking place are over. I even had some people ask, hey, Steve, why aren't you guys sitting on the baseline? Well, Paul Jones is representing us at men's basketball, Robbie Falk on the women's side, and that's kind of what they're dealing with. But the reality of it is we're happy to have basketball. We're happy to be back in the venue. We're happy to be able to cover these games for all of you. But I just wanted to kind of point that out to you guys because many of you have asked, and so I wanted to get you an answer. There will still be Diamond Girls, and eventually there'll still be, the ball boys, people that run down the basketball and that sort of stuff, and they mop up the floor and that sort of stuff. And so everybody's kind of figuring this thing out as we go. So don't believe everything you hear. Now, talk to some people and say, hey, they're going to probably de-emphasize this, whatever. There are always decisions that have to be made. But anybody thinking the Diamond Girls are going to go away, that's just not accurate based on what I'm hearing. And the people that I'm talking to are decision makers. So just kind of hang in there with us and we'll get that figured out. It's important that we all kind of understand and kind of give a little grace, okay? Because not everything is a Mississippi State decision. It's easy to blame Mississippi State, and I've got some things we're going to talk about a little bit later in the show as it relates to name, image, and likeness. I figured maybe it's time that we talk about this in depth. Because a lot of people, and I read it on the genespage.com message boards every day, people are like, hey, well, Mississippi State needs to do this. Well, a lot of things that you guys are suggesting are illegal, right? Oh, Mississippi State needs to do this. Dr. Mark Keenum needs to do that. Well, Dr. Mark Keenum cannot in any way orchestrate or facilitate a name, image, and likeness deal for a current or a prospective student athlete. Can't do it. University cannot be involved in that. Now, the alumni can if you do it in a legal way. And again, we're going to go through that a little bit later in the show. Kind of talk about that. I've got the law pulled up. I've got a few talking points I want to share with you about name, image, and likeness because there is a lot of ignorance, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I am somewhat ignorant too, as we all are, because this is a new process for us. And a lot of people have this blame Mississippi State first mentality. It's like, oh, well, this is happening. Let's fire the athletic director. Let's fire the president. Let's fire the coach. Let's fire the support staff. Let's bulldoze the stadium. All of that, there's so much of that. There is a lot of this passion that is well intended, that is not really rooted in fact. And I use that expression a lot because it's like sometimes we get so bent out of shape and excited and caught up in hyperbole and we don't really know what's going on. We just want somebody to fix it, right? So we're going to talk about that. Let's talk some hoops before we get into all of that. Got a cool top 10 list for you. It's going to be all Christmas music this week, but not the way you think. Not the way you're thinking. Right? I got 3 installments of Christmas music to go this week because it's Christmas week, and I love Christmas. I know you guys do too. And not everybody celebrates Christmas, so I'm respectful of that. You know, you're free to do whatever you want to do. I don't judge. I'm a live and let live guy. We celebrate Christmas at our house. You may celebrate Hanukkah or Kwanzaa, or you may celebrate nothing. But the reality of it is it's the holiday season, so we're going to do Christmas music this week. Let's look at basketball. It's been a busy week for the ladies, but we'll start with the men. You know, we had a disappointing loss to Colorado State. Bounced back last Tuesday and just drilled Georgia State 79-50. And then we took on a pretty good Furman team on Friday. Now, the men will be back in action Tuesday down in Jackson at the Mississippi Coliseum. So if you are in central Mississippi, come out and support the Bulldogs. That'll be at the Mississippi Coliseum. That's a 6 p.m. tip against Winthrop. I don't know if you're familiar with Winthrop, but they're a team that has had some pretty good success at times as a mid-major. But we're playing them down there in Jackson. And that's the thing, too. There are no students here. We've already finished up the semester. We've already had graduation. Many of our students are back home. So, and I love those students. I do. 2 of them, of course, are in my family. But I love our students because they are the lifeblood of our sporting events. Just how it is. Appreciate them and what they do. And so with them not being here, it's a pretty cool thing. We're taking the show on the road. We've done that in the past. I guess we played in Columbus. We played in Biloxi. Played in Tupelo. But we're going to take on Winthrop, a 6-5 Winthrop team, Tuesday night. Looking at their numbers here as of late, they lost to Elon at Elon on Wednesday of last week, 63-61. But they did beat this Furman team that we just played this past weekend, 85-80. So, again, this is a team, obviously, that's about 500. But, they played some Power 5 competition. They lose at Vanderbilt. Let me just back up here to the beginning. Okay, so they drill Mary Baldwin. It looks like Mary's the only one that showed up, 110-78. They beat Mercer, 88-85, and then lose at Middle Tennessee, 76-65. They lose at Vandy by 14. They lose at Washington State by 6. And then they beat Washington in Seattle. How about that? 82-74. So they played some Power 5 teams. They come home to beat Hartford 82-75. They lose at Coastal Carolina by 10. And then they beat Furman 85-80. Carver College, 83-52 winners over those guys. And then they lose by 2 on the road at Elon. So, again, you look at this team, it's not like they've played the Mississippi School of Math and Science. All due respect to them. But this is a Winthrop team. And here's the thing, too, and maybe I have higher aspirations for Mississippi State basketball. And I get there's a lot of college basketball hipsters out there, and they're like, hey, well, this mid-major – no, guys, listen, no. We got a head coach that's got 3 Final Fours. We have talent. We have Power 5 transfers that have joined our roster. We have a very balanced roster. We have some depth. We shouldn't be letting these teams hang around. We shouldn't. Now, the Colorado State loss, we knew that was a big challenge for us. We blew it. Let's just be honest about that. You can say what you want to. Don't try to spin it and say, Steve, they were a great team. Guys, we had a double-digit lead late, and we blew it. We blew it. Simple as that. But we have bounced back. Now, the Furman game over the weekend, similar situation. We had the big lead, and then in the second half, we couldn't do anything. We're up 35-24 at the break. They outscore us by 8 in the second half. We hold on to win 69-66. One of the biggest plays of the ball game is Cameron Matthews stepping into a passing lane and getting basically an uncontested flush at the other end to give us a little breathing room, and we absolutely needed it. But even with that, late in the ball game, they're able to run a set and get a wide-open 3 from the corner. They just couldn't knock it down. Alex Hunter from Furman had 30 points on the night, 8 of 11 from the three-point line. And here's the deal. If you are a follower of Mississippi State basketball, you know this. We are not going to get out and aggressively defend the perimeter. We're just not going to do it. I think a lot of it's got to do with Ben Howland kind of placing a premium on rebounding. It's like, you know what, hey, we're going to give them the low percentage shot. If they hit them, they hit them. But we're not going to get out there and get out of our lanes and give them the easy basket. And Alex Hunter got hot late for them. They're 25 of 46 from the floor and then 14 of 27, shooting over 50% from the three-point line. I don't understand how Alex Hunter continued to get open. I'll be honest with you. Face guard and whatever you got to do. Whatever, got to play 38 minutes, pitched in 30 points. Pretty impressive night for him. On the Mississippi State side of things, Garrison Brooks, your leading scorer with 18, pulled down 4 rebounds. Got to get a little better production from him on the glass. Iverson Molinar with 14, DJ Jeffries with 14, Shaquille Moore with 12, and had a big basket late for State. It's when State was kind of weathering the storm a little bit. We needed to kind of coil the momentum a little bit. We did. Derek Fountain back in the starting lineup has just 2 points. Played 20 minutes, and that's a guy, too, that's kind of streaky at times. But still no word yet on Tolu Smith. He has the foot injury. We don't know how extensive it is. Ben Howland meeting with the media momentarily, so you can find full coverage of that later at genespage.com. But the reality of this deal is we won the game. It wasn't pretty. It got hairy late, and I'll be honest with you, I thought we were going to blow it again. I'm just sitting here looking at these numbers here. I guess with 18-12 to go, we're up 41-28, up 13. And it feels like we're going to kind of put this thing away. Up a dozen, under 16. And the next thing you know, they get hot. They get hot. We take it back out to double digits a couple times. Even under 13 minutes, we're up 11. And the next thing you know, you look up, and it's a 6-point game. It's a 4-point game. Then it's a 1-point game. Then we're down 2. It's just, you look at this and you begin to wonder, okay, we're a team that specializes in defense and rebounding, but they were knocking down shots. Next thing you know, we're down 6 in this ball game. We're down 6 with 7 minutes to go, and you're thinking like me, I'm sure, we're going to find a way to blow this thing. They go back up 6 with 3:51 to go, and fortunately, Mississippi State players didn't quit. The Bulldogs didn't quit. We might have quit. They didn't quit. We get a basket in the paint, from DJ Jeffries, and it's an and one situation. Then we're down 3. And this is when Cam steps in there and gets the dunk to put us within 1. We had Molinar go to the glass and kind of he jumped a little bit early or whatever and missed the dunk. They had a chance. They had a chance to kind of go up here and really kind of put it away. They don't. We get the ball back. Iverson makes a couple free throws, gets us to within 1. And, again, it's Cam Matthews, the defensive stopper, getting a steal there. And we get off, and there's your Shaquille Moore basket to put State up 1 with under a minute to play. We find a way to put this thing away. We made a couple free throws late to put it away 69-66. So we win. And that's the thing, too. It's like, as bad as it was at times in that second half, we still had the fortitude to win the game. You go back a couple weeks ago, we had the similar situation, and then we kind of faded late. They got on a roll. We kind of got on a roll with them in the wrong direction. And so maybe we grew up a little bit from that. I'm not going to sit here and talk poorly about a win. This Furman team, many people project them to make the tournament. They're expected to be very good in their league. And from an athletic standpoint, you begin to say, this shouldn't happen. But it did happen. It did happen. And rather than fold, they found a way to bounce back and win a ball game. And I think in the end, that'll probably help us in the net. I think we have played some non-conference teams that are going to be very good in their league that will help us in the net. I don't. When you look at this, I don't know that we have a bad loss. That's the thing that I go back to. It's like, we have dropped some games that were frustrating. We're 8-3. You lose to Louisville. They're a good team. And we didn't play well either. We really didn't. We bounced back. We beat Richmond. And then we lose to Minnesota in Starkville. And again, that's a game we should have won. Same thing for Colorado State. And so when you begin to break these things down, you look at it and say, okay, you got 3 losses. 2 of those you could have easily and probably should have won. The only game that we have looked kind of out of sorts and looked really bad was against Louisville. They're going to make a lot of teams look bad. And so I still feel like we probably should be a double-digit win team before we start the SEC play, but it's not going to happen. Hopefully we'll take care of Winthrop. That'll make us 9-3 in the non-conference as we get ready to welcome Arkansas to the Humphrey Coliseum for the SEC opener on December 29th. That's a day after the Liberty Bowl, in case you're wondering. That's also an 8 p.m. tip, and it is an SEC network game. So we'll see. I think we're still going to figure out kind of what we are. And I've read some social media commentary, and I think it's important to kind of look at things in their context. I just try to tell you how I see it. Whether you agree or not, you're welcome to do that. I won't think any less of you. But the reality of it is, I think this team has let some games get away. Now, some of that's coaching, some of that's player execution. It kind of goes hand in hand, right? Ben Howland's not out there missing free throws. You can say, yeah, but he's putting the guys out there. We can't go sign a free agent. But here's the thing you look at, all right? So Ben Howland got here. Let's go back and look at the Ben Howland foul here. The 15-16 season, we go 14-17. But I think down the stretch there, we were as good as anybody. You remember the big win against Vanderbilt late. Vanderbilt's definitely a tournament team, and then Quindary Weatherspoon hits that buzzer beater. I don't think anybody really wanted to play us down the stretch. We had kind of figured some things out. But we finished 14-17, and even though it was a losing record, we thought, you know what? We got the right guy. We're going to be okay. He's getting the most out of the team. Once we get some talent to go around him, we're going to be okay. And, of course, Malik Newman leaves. Well, the next year we go 500. Year number 3, we're 25-12. We go 500 in the league, 9-9 record that year, and we make the NIT and make it to the semifinals. The next year, and, of course, we have NBA talent on this roster at this point. Ben Howland's recruits are beginning to grow up a little bit. Quindary Weatherspoon, Robert Woodard, Big Reg. So we go 23-11 and 10-8 in the league, and we get upset in the first round by Liberty of all people. Still kind of smarting about that too. 19-20, we go 20-11. We're 11-7, but the net was not good. They ended up canceling the tournament. You remember we played one game in the, not us personally, but the SEC had one game in the SEC tournament, then they canceled the tournament. Next thing you know, everything around the world is canceled. And then 2021, we go 18-15, and again, kind of get hot late. We finished with a sub-500 record in a league that was, we had some quality teams in the league, but there was a lot of parity in the middle half, and there always is. We took advantage of some of that, won some games late that we should have, and, of course, ended up going to the finals of the NIT. Well, now here we are again, and let's go ahead and count it down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the question that I ask you, in 7 years, as it stands today, Ben Howland is, 125-85, so we're 40 games above 500, but 51-57 in the league. 7 years, if we don't make the tournament, that's one appearance in 7 years. I think it is one of those things where you got to make a decision. You got to make a move there. You absolutely do. Now, some would say, hey, Steve, we got guys, 7 years is enough time to get your guys. Now, I am still optimistic this team will gel and will win some games in the SEC. Can we be above 500 in the league? We're going to have to be to make tournament. We're going to have to be. But I think the pieces are there once we get everybody healthy for us to do that. So I am still optimistic on this team. But I will tell you, if we do not play up to our potential, I do think you're looking at a coaching search. I do. Now, that's a worst-case type scenario in some respects. But I'm not ready to give up on the team, not when we're 9-3. Or we should be 9-3. I'm not taking care of Winthrop. And so that's the reality of that. You win that ball game, it sets you up pretty well. But we're going to have to find a way to make the Humphrey Coliseum, a formidable place to play. So if you can get out and come. I'm just asking you not to be apathetic about basketball. And it's easy to do, right? There's so much else going on. We're also locked into football and baseball. And I had somebody the other day tell me that, Steve, we're less than 2 months away from baseball season. I said, we got some basketball stuff to cheer for too. Yeah, I know. And I think that's kind of the prevailing attitude among many in the fan base. It's like, hey, we want to go cheer for Mississippi State, but we want to go cheer for them when they're winning. Well, we're winning right now. And I don't know what it's going to take to kind of get an electric atmosphere back in Hump. And I will say attendance has been better this year. It has been. So you guys are doing your part. I'm asking you, let's not give up on this team yet. Let's not check out and just say, well, I'll be back next year. I'm going to wait for some new blood and some new juice. And listen, I'll be honest with you. Sometimes we're not a lot of fun to watch, even when we win. We're kind of a grinded out team that tries to out athlete people, and offensively, we're not fun. We're not. But I do think as we continue to recruit and bring in players that have a high skill level, I think their half-court sets get a little more difficult to defend. But the reality of it is that this is a team that I believe is still capable of making the NCAA tournament, and that's what I'm going to hold on to hope to, and then we'll see how things progress. Now, let's take a look at the women's side. Women played 2 games since we were together last. We lose. Hey, Bulldog fans, it's the holidays. That means it's entertaining time. It's a new season, which means it's time to switch from white to red wine, shandies to stouts, and vodka crayons to whiskey sours. So if you're looking to get seasonal beer, wine, and spirits delivered directly to your door in under 60 minutes, do it with Drizzly. That's D-R-I-Z-L-Y. Right now, Drizzly is giving new customers $5 off with code FAST5. That's FAST5. So download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's D-R-I-Z-L-Y.com. Use promo code FAST5 for $5 off that first order. And here's the deal. How many times do you plan a nice evening at home and you have some unexpected guests? Maybe you forgot to get that great seasonal bottle of wine. Have that handled through the fine folks at Drizzly. Right now, again, Drizzly's giving $5 off. Use that promo code FAST5. You can use the app. You can use the website. Maybe you're not an app guy. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're a website person. It's the most convenient way to buy beer, wine, and spirits with delivery directly to your doorstep in under 60 minutes. Drizzly is the #1 app for alcohol delivery. So again, download the Drizzly app today or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com. This is the game against Troy, 73-66. A lot of people are disappointed. The inbox always lights up when we lose. We were behind in this one from the beginning all the way throughout. We made a good run there in the third quarter, but 19-17 lead for Troy after one. They put up 18 and 13 there in the second. So you got a 37-30 lead at the break. We respond, give the team some credit. We outscore them by 10 there in the third, which sets up an interesting fourth quarter. We end up losing by 8 in this deal to a 7-5 team from the Sun Belt. Now, looking at your leading scorers on the Bulldog side of things, Rakia Jackson pitches in 25. Jakalia Jordan, who has proven to be a very good complementary scorer to Rakia. And Rakia is a volume shooter, 26 shots on the night. Mississippi State attempted 75. She had more than a third of them. Jakalia Jordan, 18 points for her. And then Danae Carter off the bench had 11. And that's where Troy really hurt us, was on the glass. They were just better. 60 rebounds to our 39. That just, we talk about missing Jessica Carter. This is where it shows up in games like this. And when we get into SEC play, there are going to be some teams that are going to go right to the post against us because they know we just don't have that dominant post defender. So we dropped that ball game. And again, 3 games in 3 days. We bounced back yesterday and again didn't play well, but found a way there to kind of hang around. And then in the fourth quarter, we win. And this is Jackson State team, not good. Not good, friend. They're 2-5 on the year. We're up 4 after 1, and then they go on a 17-9 run in the second quarter. They're up at the break. Then it's a 20-14 run for us in the third. And then finally in the fourth quarter, we put them away with a 25-19 advantage there to win by 8. And so the reality of it is, we're playing against some mediocre basketball teams and at times playing pretty mediocre. And that won't work in the SEC. We all know it. And to be fair to Doug Novak and those guys, he's in a situation really where, he's not doing the job he signed up to do. Rakia Jackson with 24 reaches the 1,000-point club. And I believe Robbie Falk had a stat yesterday, the 5th fastest to do it in school history. Danae Carter, 17 points. Nice game for her. That's back-to-back games with double figures for her in the starting lineup. And maybe that's what we've got to run. We've got to have somebody in there that can play the post for us. Jakalia Jordan, 11 points. Again, a consistent double-digit score. Maya Taylor handed out 7 assists and pitched in 9 points. Also 3 steals on the day. And Kataria Thompson with 3. Aswin Hayes with 8. And so, we're 74-66 winners. Now, I mentioned 3 games in 3 days. That's right. The ladies playing today at 2:30. I believe it is. Let's double-check that. Yeah, 2:30 today. That's an SEC Network Plus game against South Carolina State. the last non-conference game of the schedule for us as we get into league play. Now, this is one of those things you look at here. You know, we played poorly against the 2-5 Jackson State team. If I'm South Carolina State, I'm thinking, hey, we got a chance to go in there and get an SEC win. You know, not to mention, you know, they're in your legs a little bit, 3 games in 3 days. But here's the deal. South Carolina State, dreadful. 0-10 on the year. And these games have not been competitive for the most part. I mean, and let me run these down for you just so you get an idea of how dreadful they've been. They lose Old Dominion 80-52, Coastal Carolina 81-57, South Carolina Upstate 70-51, University of St. Thomas 65-50, Georgia Southern, the Fighting Jared Bankos 72-57, Jacksonville State 75-43, Campbell, our friends the Fighting Camels 67-46, North Carolina A&T 86-46, and in Western Carolina 61-52, Wake Forest 94-40. So we should have a chance to go out here, win this thing, and be done with it, and feel a little bit better about our team. You know, 3 games in 3 days, tough on anybody. But the reality of it is, a lot of people play in these games, and so the ladies right now are 8-3. And again, it's amazing how similar the road has been for both men and women. We're going to be 9-3. We expected to be double-digit wins on both sides. And this is a very manageable non-conference schedule for Mississippi State on the women's side. Big win earlier with Dayton. We opened up pretty good shape, and then we got drilled by Michigan. But the reality of it is we're probably pretty much on schedule for what we expected. Of course, the loss to Troy is the one thing that kind of looms large. But the reality of it is, we can make that up. Is this a tournament team? I don't think so. We were picked to be in the women's NIT last year and passed on that opportunity. Do we need to play this year? I would say probably not. We're in the middle of a coaching search. I'm told that, we're beginning to the funnel is narrowing down. There won't be a hire made, obviously, until the season's over. So we're talking March, before we make a hire. But that's the beauty, I guess, of having time to figure this thing out, is you can kind of identify some coaches and be ready to go, kind of have your situation kind of ironed out sooner rather than later. But that's where we are. Can't make it any better or any worse than what it is. I mean, and again, Doug Novak and his staff doing the best they can to put a competitive basketball team on the floor. They should win today, and then we'll open up December 30th, 10 days from today. That's a Thursday night, 6 p.m. tip against Florida, and we'll see how things go. Again, if we can finish 500 in the SEC this year, I think Doug Novak is a guy that probably deserves a debt of gratitude if we're able to do that. It's one of those things, man. You get excited about it, and it's like when you're going to be a mediocre team, it's kind of hard to maintain that enthusiasm. But it's not like they're not out there playing hard. I believe Doug Novak is getting a lot out of this team. And again, there's a lot of moving parts to this, a lot of new players that are kind of becoming familiar with playing together. And so, we're going to kind of go as Rakia Jackson goes, and we get into SEC play, they're going to be determined to make somebody else beat them, and that's where somebody else is going to have to step up and kind of lead the show. But that's your basketball update, again, brought to you by the fine folks at Bulldog Burger Company. All right, time for today's top 10 list, brought to you by closewithblair.com. That's close, C-L-O-S-E, closewithblair.com, as you are looking to close your mortgage loan. Maybe you're looking to buy a home for the first time. Maybe you're looking to refinance your current home. Maybe you want to take advantage of these lower interest rates, get your equity working for you, pay off some debt, consolidate some of those credit cards. Maybe you ran that debt up during the quarantine. You want to lower your overall monthly payment, give yourself a little breathing room, improve your quality of life. Blair can help you with that. Maybe you're looking for a second mortgage, perhaps a home equity line of credit. Blair can help you with every bit of that. And this is a guy, too, that works for Fairway Mortgage, recently named the #1 mortgage lender in America. How cool is that? So this is not some fly-by-night subprime lending operation. This is a company that's going to be there. And Blair's a guy that's been doing it 21 years. Top 1% close ratio nationally. Not a guy that's just kind of passing through till we find something else. This is a guy that's a committed mortgage professional. And he believes in doing business with Bulldogs whenever he can. Of course, he'll take he'll take business from anywhere, so it doesn't matter what school you root for. If you're listening to this show, if you mention to him that you heard about him on the Boneyard, he's going to pay for your appraisal. And that's up to a $500 to $600 value. Give Blair a call or text today. It's 601-500-2344. Again, 601-500-2344. That's his personal cell number, guys. That's not some office phone. There's not just somebody sitting behind a desk taking your message. You go directly to the source. Blair is my friend. That means he's your friend. We want to keep it in the family, whatever we can. So mention to him that you heard about him on the Boneyard, and he is going to give you the kinfolks discount on every bit of that. So be sure to check him out today. Again, that's Blair Chandler at closewithblair.com. All right. Christmas music. And I like to challenge myself with all this stuff. And you guys know that I'm a rocker. And so we're going to do some different things this week, okay? So today, our first installment of our Christmas music, we're going to do the Rocking Christmas. Now, these are not cover songs. We talk about everybody has these cover songs. We're going to do covers on Wednesday. Okay, we're going to do covers on Wednesday or something like that. We're going to do more radio-friendly type stuff. A lot of this, not radio-friendly. So we're going to do Christmas kind of mixed up a little bit. We're going to do the Rocking Christmas songs today. And these are original Christmas songs. They're not rock versions of classic Christmas carols. These are original rock Christmas songs. Couple honorable mentions. Let's go Naughty Christmas by Lacuna Coil. I love Christina Scabia. She's incredible. The Stocking Song by Steel Panther. Don't listen to that with your kids in the car. And Backdoor Santa by the Black Crowes. There you go. You didn't think you'd get a Steel Panther reference today, but you did. And again, don't listen to that with your kids in the car. All right, so here we go. Number 10. And you might know them more from their big hit, Stacy's Mom. But it's I Want an Alien for Christmas by Fountains of Wayne. How about that? You weren't expecting that either. Number 9, this is a song that Korn actually covered from the Nightmare on the Nightmare of Christmas, I guess. I think that's the name of the movie, but it's Kidnap the Sandy Claus. Korn. They actually did a couple of Christmas covers, but that's the one that was a little more family-friendly. The Nightmare Before Christmas. There we go. Number 8, making their first appearance on the list, it's a heavy metal Christmas with Twisted Sister. That's right. Twisted Sister making the list today. Heavy metal Christmas. Number 7, going back and God rest their souls, man. One of the great punk bands of the 1970s and the early 80s. It's Merry Christmas, I Don't Want to Fight Tonight by the Ramones. I told you it was a diverse list. It's a little different. Number 6, you probably never heard this, and this will blow your mind if you're a rock fan. It's Heavy Christmas by 220 Volt. Heavy Christmas. It's basically Christmas lyrics and Christmas kind of, commentary plugged in over some incredible guitar riffs. Number 5, from the Adore album by Smashing Pumpkins, it's Christmas Time. And this is a little more in tune with the regular Christmas. But I figured since we're doing original rock songs for Christmas, we had to work in the Smashing Pumpkins. So Christmas Time by Smashing Pumpkins, your number 5 song. Number 4, I never miss a chance to put Queen and Freddie Mercury on the list when we can. I'm a huge Freddie Mercury fan. God rest his soul. But it's Thank God It's Christmas, a song written by Brian May. And wonderfully performed by Freddie Mercury. I don't know why this doesn't get played more often, to be honest with you. Not that I sit around and listen to a lot of Christmas music, but I get out and I shop and everything, and it's like you hear the same 10, 12 songs over and over again. But why not Her Majesty the Queen? All right, number 3, back on the list is Dee Snider. Now, here's the deal. And most of you have heard this song and heard Celine Dion record it. Well, Dee Snider wrote it. How about that? Did you know that connection? That's the thing about the Boneyard. You never know what little nugget of trivia you're going to get. So Celine Dion covers a Dee Snider song. Dee wrote it originally for his wife. Celine Dion recorded it, had a huge hit, and then Dee Snider, and then they did their own Twisted Christmas album. and the magic of Christmas Day with Dee Snider and Lizzie Hale from Hailstorm. Many of you are new fans of hers because of this show, which gives me a great source of pride to know that I'm turning you on to Lizzie Hale, who is the greatest rock vocalist of the female variety of this generation. I think she is this generation's Janis Joplin, and with even more incredible range. She uses the low register well, but she can hit the high notes. Love her, love Hailstorm. And so Dee Snider and Lizzie Hale, The Magic of Christmas Day, that's your number 3 song. Now, here's one that most of you have never heard. I guarantee it. And it is wonderful. It is absolutely wonderful. But it's Christmas time. Don't Let the Bells End by The Darkness. You say, Steve, The Dark? Yes, that's right. I Believe in a Thing Called Love. Same band. This is a really, really good song. It is a really, really good song. And that's the thing, too. Like bands like The Darkness, it's one of the things I love about rock and roll, man. Rock and roll is fun. There's some people taking themselves too seriously. The Darkness is not one of those bands. Those guys are kind of caricatures of themselves. They have a great time. Matter of fact, I watched I Believe in a Thing Called Love before I recorded the show. Watch a video. It's so crazy. It's so over-the-top cheesy, but I love it. But Christmas time, Don't Let the Bells In. It's a cool song. It really is. And number 1, we're going with the riff master, Angus Young. And if you know anything about the AC/DC catalog, you know exactly where I'm going with this. Off the Razor's Edge. It's Mistress for Christmas by AC/DC. How about that? You didn't expect to get that today. So there's your rocking Christmas. We'll do something a little different on Wednesday. And then we'll be a little more traditional on Friday since it'll be Christmas Eve. You're thinking, Steve, you're going to record on Christmas Eve? You're absolutely right, I am. You're absolutely right. Probably record on the day before, and we'll just publish it on Christmas Eve. But I'll have family in this weekend. But you guys, many of you will be traveling for Christmas, and so we'll have a Christmas-themed Boneyard on Friday. And come back on Monday, we'll preview the Liberty Bowl. Looking forward to that. Excited to get out there and be a part of all that. And, we still got some football left to play. None of your SEC bowl teams have played yet, and there's 13 of them. So you're going to get a lot of things to root for and against. And I'll be honest with you, I'll share my picks a little bit later in the week. Probably do that on Friday. I think it could be a losing bowl season for the SEC. I really do. And I think because there is so much parity in the league and we have 13 teams that are bowl eligible, you got a lot of mediocre teams in the postseason. That's my hot take for today. It's going to be a losing year in the bowl season for the Southeastern Conference. How about that? All right, next segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart. Love those guys. You will too. Stan and man, Miss Kathy Brown, lovely, talented Susie Candy, the whole crew will treat you like family because you are family. They've been doing this a long time. They're not some fly-by-night operation that showed up and put an MSU flag out in front and said, hey, come buy your merch here. These people go to ball games. These people rise and fall with the emotions of the Mississippi State athletics experience just like you do. You go in there, you can talk about the ball game with Stan the Man. He's happy to talk to you with a smile on his face. He's always happy to see you. If you can't make it to town to meet him in person, you can support them, and I encourage you to shop local whenever you can. Support our great Starkville businesses. Go to campusbookmart.net, courtesy of Al Gore's Internet. And by being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays. It's BSR. It stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. And you get free shipping on all orders over $50. Any order less than $50, absolutely incomplete. So again, that's campusbookmart.net, promo code BSR. You're running out of time. You only got a few days left. You may want to come by and check it out. Or call ahead and say, hey, I need to order this. Can you ship it in time for Christmas? I wouldn't take anything for granted. I know they're working hard to get all these orders out. But you've waited really late. You've procrastinated. It's your own fault. I've procrastinated too. I got to blame myself. But the reality of it is I can drive around town and get all the Mississippi State merch I want to. So again, visit them, our good friends at Campus Bookmart at campusbookmart.net. Let's get into some name, image, and likeness stuff. And because I know this is a real bear, and there's a lot of misconceptions, so let's talk about this for a bit. Now, the first thing I'll tell you is I'm not a lawyer. Hadn't passed the bar, but I know a little bit. And so I want to break this thing down for you as best I can. I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there about name, image, and likeness. I'm going to try to clear those up today. So this bill was passed back April the 16th. It is known as the Mississippi Intercollegiate Athletics Compensations Right Act. So it gives student athletes the ability to earn compensation for their name, image, and likeness. It doesn't prevent other people from profiting off their name, image, and likeness. Does that make sense to you? Now, there are a couple things that I'll say about that. I'm talking like media. So let's say, for an example, the Clarion Ledger goes out and shoots a picture of a Mississippi State student athlete. Well, the Clarion Ledger is a for-profit business, so it doesn't preclude them from using those images. I think it's important for people to understand that. So basically, they're going to exchange their likeness and be able to profit from it, where everybody else has kind of made money on student athletes. They have not been able to share. If you recall, there was a time that the NCAA themselves sold jerseys based on player numbers, and then the student athletes received nothing from that. That's interesting, right? So there's a lot of legalese and all this stuff. I'm not going to read the summary, but I'm going to get into basically Section 4, because basically what it does, Section 1 talks about what they're going to call it. Section 2 kind of details, defines what compensation is, talks about scholarships, payments, that sort of stuff, kind of defines what likeness, name, image, and likeness, all that stuff means. So a lot of legalese involved in every bit of that. So the purpose of the law is kind of defined in Section 3. Earn compensation commensurate with market value for the use of the name, image, or likeness of the student athlete while enrolled at a post-secondary educational institution. So what that basically means, that's what we're trying to establish, is what is fair market value. So is it fair to say, I'm going to go give a guy $10,000 to come to my kid's birthday party? Well, yeah, you could probably get an appearance, but not $10,000, because that essentially would be well exceeding the fair market value. Now, everybody's time is worth something, and obviously, players like Landon Sims are going to be much more in demand than, say, your backup or your bullpen catcher. It's just the reality of life. It's not a pay-for-play type deal, but guys that play well and ladies that play well are going to be more in demand. So it is basically economics 101. Someone that has a higher profile is going to earn more money. That doesn't mean you can just funnel money to them through name, image, and likeness of an egregious value. So they can obtain and retain a certified agent for any matter or activity relating to such compensation. So basically, they can get an agent to help fill these offers and negotiate these deals without jeopardizing their eligibility. Now, it's not as simple as just anybody can go be a name, image, and likeness agent. That's kind of defined by the state. They passed that law years and years ago. So you have to be an actual attorney, from what I understand. You have to have been an outstanding member of the bar. You have to pass the bar and be an attorney in practice to do this. No student athlete may earn compensation in exchange for the student athlete's athletic ability or participation in intercollegiate athletics or sports competition. And so basically what that means is, okay, you can't go out there and say, hey, since you play for us, we're going to put this name, image, and likeness deal together. And there's so many people out there that are like, hey, well, the school should do this, the school should do that. We're getting behind a name, image, and likeness. Well, the school cannot be involved in any of that. They can't broker the deal. They can't put people together. It's got to be something that's kind of originates on the grassroots level. Now, here's the deal. The rules only apply to law-abiding, right? And here's the reality of this. You know as well as I do, the NCAA is just waiting. It's low-hanging fruit. They're just waiting for somebody to do something silly here. And maybe they have. We've read about Miami and Texas A&M and some other schools. I think Texas A&M was one of them. But a handful of schools are already being investigated for perceived abuse of name, image, and likeness legislation. The final bullet point in Section 3, notwithstanding any other provision of applicable law or agreement to the contrary, a student athlete shall not be deemed an employee or independent contractor of an association, a conference, a post-secondary educational institution on the state's student-athletes' participation in intercollegiate athletics programs. So basically, they're not employees of the university. And I think that is an important distinction because essentially they're independent contractors, right? So if they were considered employees, then all of a sudden there's benefits involved. It becomes a much more complicated situation if they are deemed employees of a university. Now here, I'm going to run through all this stuff here, and there's a lot to it, okay? And I'm going to do my best to explain it as I understand it. Section 4, and this is where the meat of the law kind of comes in here. Except as provided for under this act, a post-secondary educational institution shall not uphold any contract, rule, regulation, standard, or other requirement that prevents a student-athlete of that institution from earning compensation as a result of the use of the student's name, image, or likeness. Any such contract, rule, regulation, standard, or other requirement shall be void and unenforceable against the university or the student-athlete. Compensation from the use of a student-athlete's name, image, or likeness may not affect the student's athletic scholarship eligibility, grant and aid, or other financial aid, awards, or benefits, or the student-athlete's intercollegiate athletic ability. Nothing in this act is intended to alter any state and federal laws or regulations regarding the award of financial aid at post-secondary educational institutions. So basically what they're saying is, if you're out there making a ton of name, image, and likeness money, they can't say, okay, well, since you're making all this money, we're going to take your scholarship and give it to somebody else. So no matter how much money you make, the university can't revoke your scholarship. Because there's some people out there that would say, hey, that's what we'll do. We'll set up a name, image, and likeness deal through our partners, and then you'll essentially be a walk-on. So there is no risk in that respect for the student-athlete. I think that's an important part of this thing, too. Section 4, paragraph 2, except as provided for in this act, an athletic association, conference, or other group or organization with authority over intercollegiate athletic programs, that means the NCAA and NAIA, including to but not limited to the NCAA, the National Junior College Association, shall not prevent or otherwise enforce a contract, rule, regulation, standard, or requirement that prevents a student-athlete from earning compensation as a result of their image, name, or likeness. Or name, image, likeness. And so basically they can't put a rule in later that say, hey, even though it's legal in the state of Mississippi, you can't do this or it jeopardizes your eligibility. And that's where I think the NCAA has really dropped the ball in this deal. They have allowed the state and federal government to get involved and to set these parameters, and now it kind of limits the enforcement of the NCAA. And that's, again, goes back to leadership or a lack of leadership within the NCAA. It's like you put it off as long as you can. You put it off and put it off and put it off and put it off, and then somebody else steps in, and now all of a sudden they're the ones making the rules, and there's not a lot you can do to change it. Paragraph D3, to protect the integrity of its educational mission and intercollegiate athletics program, a secondary and post-secondary educational institution may impose reasonable limitations on the dates and time a student-athlete may participate in endorsement, promotional, social media, or other activities related to the license or use of a student's name, image, or likeness. Basically what they're saying is, we can't, we got to have a schedule here. And so we got practice, you got classes. So you're going to have to do this on your own time. You're not going to be able to do this to interfere with the schedule and the practice regimen that is set forth by the athletic department. So let's move ahead here. Nothing in this act shall restrict a post-secondary educational institution from exercising its sole discretion to control the authorized use of its marks or logos to determine a student-athlete's apparel, gear, or other wearables during an intercollegiate athletics competition or institutionally sponsored event. A student-athlete may not receive or enter into a contract for compensation for the use of his or her name, image, or likeness in a way that uses any registered or licensed marks, logos, verbiage, or designs of a post-secondary institution, unless the institution has provided the student-athlete with written permission to do so to execution of the contract or receipt of compensation. So basically what this means is a Mississippi State athlete can be a part of a marketing campaign. However, unless they have paid the licensing fee to use the M/S or any identifying marks of Mississippi State, they can't use it. They can't say it. There's nothing they can do to basically tie the institution to themselves because they themselves are a brand. They are profiting off their brand, not the Mississippi State brand. Now, there is a partnership, obviously, between Mississippi State and its student athletes that allows everybody to further their brand. But that said, you can't trade on the Mississippi State name without Mississippi State receiving some type of compensation for it. If that makes sense. Now, you have seen some shirts out there that have like Landon Sims on them and the M over S. Well, then what that tells me is whoever is producing those shirts has gotten permission to use the M over S. Mississippi State is, I won't say stingy, but they're very, very protective of their logos and marks, and so they're not just going to give those things away. Paragraph 4, an athletic association, conference, or other group or organization with authority over intercollegiate athletics programs, including but not limited to the NCAA and the NJCAA, shall not enforce a contract rule, regulation, standard, or other requirement that prevents a post-secondary education institution from participating in intercollegiate athletics programs as a result of the compensation of a student athlete for the use of the student athlete's name, image, or likeness, if I can make it through this. And again, that's back to the logo. It's like they can't be found liable for that. The university, the NCAA can't step in and say, hey, this is wrong. Mississippi State can't allow this thing to happen. Paragraph 5, a post-secondary educational institution, and there is a lot of that. I'm going to just kind of skip that. So anybody with the authority over intercollegiate athletics programs, including the NCAA and NJC, shall not, directly or indirectly, enter into or offer to enter into a name, image, and likeness agreement with a prospective or current student athlete. Does that make sense to you? The NCAA, they can't say, hey, we're going to make this deal with you. And so basically they would profit off of that as well. Section B, provide a prospective or current student athlete or the student athlete's family compensation in relation to the use of the student athlete's name, image, or likeness. Basically, part 2 of that. Everybody involved, including the NCAA, cannot prevent a student athlete from obtaining professional representation. That's about they can't stop you from going out and hiring an agent to help facilitate some of these transactions. Student athletes should provide the school with written notice at least 7 days prior to entering into a representation agreement with any individual for the purpose of exploring or securing compensation for their name, image, or likeness. So there's a process there. And again, that's the protection of the student athlete. There are a lot of people out there trying to exploit these student athletes. Paragraph 7, professional representation obtained by student athletes must be from persons registered as an athletic agent as provided in the state law. That's the Uniform Athlete Agent Act. Attorneys who provide legal representation to student athletes must be licensed to practice law in the state of Mississippi and in good standing with the Mississippi Bar. We kind of covered that earlier. But there are a lot of people out there that are kind of getting involved and offering these deals to these kids. And it is important they have representation to ensure they're not being exploited and they are getting their fair market value. Paragraph 8, athlete agents representing student athletes must comply with the Uniform Athlete Agents Act, the Federal Sports Agent Responsibility and Trust Act, and there's some legal verbiage there. So basically it means, again, you got to have a professional attorney representing you, and then there are some parameters that they must follow, and they'll know. Granting aid, including costs of attendance and other permissible financial aid, awards, or benefits from the post-secondary educational institution in which a student athlete is enrolled shall not be revoked, reduced, nor the terms and conditions altered as a result of a student athlete earning compensation or obtaining professional or legal representation pursuant to this act. So basically, if you get out and you go hire somebody, if you're a partial scholarship athlete, they can't say, okay, well, you were getting 50%, but now that you're going to pursue all these, we're going to cut you to 33. So again, there's no fear of a student athlete having their scholarship or financial aid impacted. The university can't do that. They can't step in and say, well, since you're able to pay your own way, we're going to pull your scholarship. That's an important provision. Before any contract for compensation for the use of a student athlete's name, image, or likeness is executed, and before any compensation is provided to the student athlete in advance of a contract, the student athlete shall disclose the contract to a designated official, which is your compliance officers, in which the student is enrolled in a manner prescribed by the institution. And so Steve Smith is handling that for Mississippi State compliance. He is the guy that basically is ensuring that everything is done to the letter. So what I'm told they do is the student athlete goes into Compass, which is the website there, kind of a database, and they say, hey, I've been offered a deal here, and I've found an agent here. And so there is a written record of everything, all communications between Steve Smith, the Mississippi State Compliance Department, and our student athletes. Paragraph 11, a third-party licensee may not enter into or offer to enter into a name, image, and likeness agreement with a student athlete or otherwise compensate a student athlete for the use of the name, image, and likeness if a provision of the name, image, and likeness agreement or the use of that conflicts with the provision of a contract, rule, or regulation, standard, or other requirement of the university, unless such contract is expressly approved in writing by the school. Pretty straightforward there. Now, here's where things get a little bit murky at times. And this is what we talked about. There's no shortage of people that want to help and get involved. And there's a lot of this going on in recruiting right now. And this is where I think you're going to see some meaningful legislation sooner rather than later. Paragraph 12. The school, booster, third-party licensee, or other individual or entity shall provide a prospective or current student-athlete compensation or enter into a name, image, and likeness agreement as an inducement for the student-athlete to attend or enroll in a specific institution. So basically what we're talking about here is it's recruiting. You can't offer a recruit a name, image, and likeness deal. You can't say, hey, if you pick our school, then this is what we're going to have arranged for you. And you've seen Lane Kiffin talk about this recently, and this is where I think it's important too. This is something that impacts everybody. Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Southern Miss, Jackson State, Alcorn, Valley, everybody involved is impacted by this, because if there are people out there that are offering recruits these deals, and it's happening, because it's still also new. And there are people, basically, we talk about, the rules only apply to the law-abiding. If you're out there doing this, this is not only an NCAA issue, it is now a violation of state law. And so if there are student athletes within the state of Mississippi or plan to enroll at a university in the state of Mississippi, if they have been offered a name, image, and likeness deal in return for their signing day signature, that's a violation, and it's a law. It's an egregious offense of the state law. And there's a real challenge here too. And it's like the Jackson State stuff we talked about. I don't know what's true in that situation or not. All these people reveal this, and you never know what their intentions are, right? There may be people out there that are just sour-graped and say, hey, this guy picked Jackson State because they're going to pay him all this money. And you've seen Deion Sanders go out there and say, we don't have any money. Now, here's where it gets a little interesting with that deal. Let's say Barstool Sports, and again, they are rumored to be involved in this, so who knows what's true and what's not true. Let's say they propose, hey, if you go to Jackson State, we're going to film this documentary about you and we're going to pay you for it. Well, if that documentary is not offered to him to go to another school, then it could get to be a little interesting. Because let's be honest, if the number one prospect in the country goes to Florida State, it's really not that big a story. He goes to Jackson State, it's a huge story. And so if they're trying to profit off that, let's say they've made a proposal to him, and again, this is all hypothetical because, again, I don't know all the facts behind this. But if they offered that to him basically as an inducement to go to Jackson State, you've got a real problem on your hands. Paragraph 13, no student athlete, again, name, image, and likeness, can receive compensation from a third-party licensee relating to name, image, and likeness before the date in which a student enrolls at the school. And we've talked about that before. You can't broker the deal. You can't have an understanding that, hey, once you come to our school, we're going to arrange a name, image, and likeness deal for you, whether it be officially or unofficially. The school can't be involved in it anyway. But those deals are basically null and void. And so this is where I think the Mississippi legislature has a real responsibility. If they find out that there has been compensation offered through name, image, and likeness to get players to attend certain institutions prior to their enrollment date, you've got a problem on your hands. So what are you going to do about it? And again, that's got to be proven. You say, well, Steve, you can't prove illegal inducements. So how are you going to prove this? Well, because this is an NIL deal, there has to be a paper trail somewhere, right? Because who would agree to do that? Who would sign a national letter of intent based on a verbal promise? So I suspect there'll be some text messages and things like that. Because, what if, let's say, for an example, a guy that was promised all this. Hey, I'm promised this name, image, likeness deal, so I'm going to go to Tennessee. And then all of a sudden he enrolls, and all of a sudden the opportunities dry up, and it's like it's basically dirty pool. And I'm not casting aspersions at Tennessee. I'm just using them as an example. Well, we're going to promise you all this money. Well, then you get here. Well, now you're locked into the name, image, and likeness deal. But if there's not a contract out there, then everybody could walk away. All these promises could simply disappear. And then if you want to go in the portal, you can go in the portal. So what happens then? Does the guy go back in the portal and all of a sudden the sweepstakes begins again? I guess we'll see. But that's something to really watch. So you can't offer an NIL deal to a recruit, and you can't have any contract or any understanding with anybody until they're enrolled in your institution. Paragraph 14, no student athlete shall enter into an NIL agreement from a third-party licensee for the endorsement or promotion of gambling, sports betting, controlled substances, marijuana, tobacco, or alcohol, company branded products, alternative or electronic nicotine products, or a delivery system, performance-enhancing supplements, adult entertainment, or any other product or service that is reasonably considered to be inconsistent with the values or mission of a basically a state school. So basically what this boils down to, let's say for an example, let's say you had a student athlete that said, hey, I'm working with this gaming institution. And I don't mean online gaming. I mean, it's like, okay, well, let's say, there's an off-site gambling company. They could not have a deal with them to promote gambling. You couldn't be involved in that. You couldn't be involved with, I guess CBD or legalized marijuana, because, in some states, marijuana is legal. And so let's say out in Colorado, you sign with Colorado, and then there's some, marijuana dispensary down there that wants to sign a deal with you. Well, you couldn't do that in the state of Mississippi. And so that's what makes all this so interesting. It's like people are saying, hey, Barstool and Penn Live Gaming or whatever it was. And again, you don't know how true those reports are. And I'm sure there's a lot of people kind of looking into that stuff now. So if you've brokered a deal with the student athlete prior to signing day, that's an issue. And then on top of that, you're working on a sports betting type situation. That's a secondary issue. So you've got two issues there that are rather interesting, and both violations of state law. A contract for the use of a student athlete's name, image, and likeness, which is formed while the student athlete is participating in an intercollegiate sport at a school, may not extend beyond the student athlete's participation in the sport at the institution. So let's say Jake Mangum was here and we had an NIL deal for him through a third party. Well, that terminates once his college eligibility is over. Once he's no longer a Mississippi State player, then it ends. And so I think that's an important thing too. So you can't structure these deals where it's like, hey, we're going to give you $1 million and it's going to go over 10 years. Nothing in this act shall be interpreted to modify any requirement or obligations imposed under Title IX. That is one of those things too that's where I think one of the bigger legal challenges is coming. And that's where it gets really, really hairy. Because here's the deal. Mississippi State University and other universities are under Title IX supervision. Like, they have to provide scholarships, an equal number of scholarships for men's and women's sports. And so if the university is not brokering these deals, what's to stop somebody in a fair market enterprise, saying, hey, well, there's not as many opportunities for female student athletes. And if the university is not a partner in all this, how do they generate opportunities for female student athletes? We talk about fair market value. It is the same. Now, a few years ago, when the women's basketball team, every one of those ladies, Tierra McCowan, Victoria Vivians, Blair Schaefer, the lot of them, you don't think there was an increased fair market value for those players than there would be your current players? There absolutely would be, because they were playing at a higher level. They were competing for national championships. You knew them. You went down and got their pictures with your kids post-game. And so I would suggest back in those days that their fair market value would exceed most of the male athletes on the Mississippi State campus, maybe with the exception of maybe Dak Prescott and a few stars and Jake Mangum. But I think by and large, if there were a name, image, and likeness deal in place for Tierra McCowan or Victoria Vivians, they would have raked in money. There's no question about it. And so that's where I think the Title IX thing is going to be awfully interesting, because a third-party enterprise, like if I have a business, let's say genespage.com, and I was going to enter into a name, image, and likeness deal with a student athlete, I'm going to pay fair market value. Let's say I go get, Will Rogers. Well, Will Rogers' fair market value is probably higher today than, let's say, Rakia Jackson. And so do I pay them both the same? Well, I would, right? Because I believe in equal pay for everybody when it comes to that sort of stuff. I think it would be wrong to pay Will Rogers one thing and pay Rakia Jackson something else. But somebody else may not be so inclined to do that. So how do you enforce that? How do you enforce Title IX on an independent business, somebody that is not, subjected to that legislation? You don't fall under that because, Title IX is an educational amendment. It's not a situation where, the NCAA or even the Title IX can say, okay, we're going to go tell a business how to fund their advertising campaigns. So what do? And again, it's like these protections are in here, but if the university is not involved in brokering the deals, how do you enforce that? That's one of the things I think with this law. I think sometimes I wonder if we even need a law. And if we needed a law to basically make it legal, I get it. But you put all this other stuff in here, and I think you open yourself up to some things that maybe perhaps are, maybe a little bit conflicted, if that makes sense. I mean, I think in some respects the law might even kind of overstep, the boundaries of what the state government should be able to do with free enterprise. Again, free enterprise is not bound by Title IX. It's not subject to an educational amendment. So again, a lot to figure out here for sure. Now, so there's a few other sections in here too that basically kind of fill some things out, and define some things for you. But the bottom line is this: the school can't be involved. Student athletes can get representation. They have to be attorneys in good standing with the Mississippi Bar Association. The university cannot in any way impede or reduce student athletes' financial aid if they pursue a name, image, and likeness opportunity. And I think that is a concern. I think that is probably a good provision under the law, especially in partial scholarship sports. I mean, just think about college baseball. It's like, okay, well, here's the deal. Now that you're able to fund your own education, we're going to take your scholarship and give it to somebody else. Well, what if the name, image, and likeness money draws up? What if I lose my deal? What if they decide they don't want to renew me? These deals don't last forever. A lot of these are just one-off deals. They're just paying these people a few $100, and so it's not life-changing money in some respects. And like everybody looks at the the streamers, like the people that get on Twitch and things like that, and that they're making a bunch of money, as streaming gaming, that sort of stuff, and all that's cool. But the reality of it is they should be able to profit from that, but they shouldn't lose their financial aid as a result, because everybody's financial situation is different. And there are a lot of young people too that they need that money to be able to enjoy college. It's like you say, well, Steve, I had to struggle through college too. Well, maybe you should have worked harder in the weight room. I don't know. But the reality of it is this is a very, very, very convoluted issue. And there are a lot of people offering opinions about this that I don't think understand the law. And I'll be honest with you, even though we have gone over these provisions in the law, I don't fully understand it either. But I do know that it can't be attached to recruiting. It can't be attached to, transfers. You can't say, hey, you come here. And according to Lane Kiffin, and I think we take him at his word here, to be honest with you, and I'm not a huge Lane Kiffin fan, but if these are the conversations that he's hearing with recruits, I think you got to take that on face value. And someone would say, oh, he's just making excuses. Well, here's the deal. I mean, he's not the only person saying that. He's the only person maybe in our state that are saying that. They're going where they get the most money. And so that's an issue. And again, we've kind of opened a Pandora's box here. And so how do you enforce it? Because are people going to be out there and say, here's the deal. We can't put it in writing yet, but I got 2 car dealerships that as soon as you sign with LSU, we're going to take care of you. You're going to get a new vehicle once a semester or whatever. You can use their vehicles and just do some social media stuff for them. We're going to loan you the vehicles. Well, that's one of the things that got Ole Miss in trouble, during their recent NCAA case. And so now, in some respects, that's legal. Now you can make an exchange. You can barter in exchange for advertising for goods and services. Because it's not just compensation. There can be gifts. There can be services. And so if these conversations are happening, the NCAA has a duty to act. Your state legislature has a duty to act. If the state institutions are put at a competitive disadvantage in recruiting because of this law, then it needs to be changed or revoked. But something needs to be done to protect the school institutions. And this is where, listen, there's a lot of disagreements, shall we say, between Mississippi State and Ole Miss. But this is one of those things that we are both kind of similarly situated. And that's not to say that Ole Miss people aren't going to get motivated with name, image, and likeness. They absolutely are, and we are too. And there are people like, oh, we're going to fall behind here. John needs to do this. Okay, John can't do it. I just read you the law. The institution cannot impede or encourage anything related to name, image, and likeness. Can't do it. And so basically what this law does is it enables your student athletes to make money off their name, image, and likeness, whether it be the sale of their jersey, whether it be them doing an advertising campaign for a local car dealership or a business, or maybe you have them come sign autographs for a fundraiser at your school or civic organization. Then they are compensated for their time and their effort and their image. But it's not as simple as I think people think it is. It's not the Wild Wild West just yet, but there needs to be some parameters put in place to ensure that everybody's on the level playing field. Like in our state, let's say a couple years ago, Cam Akers, right? Cam Akers was a big-time prospect. You don't think that, C-Spire or other people like that would have profited by having the most recognizable high school athlete in the state of Mississippi pushing their brand? When Malik Newman was out a couple of years ago, you don't think that there's some companies out there where it said, hey, we've got some good opportunities? I mean, you've got a national level recruit representing your organization. It makes a lot of sense to me. Well, now, we can't do that in the state of Mississippi. You can do it in other states. As we saw recently, you had a quarterback moved to Ohio, signed a deal with an energy drink company to make money, and ultimately transferred anyway. But the reality of it is there has to be a uniform policy that we're all working under. If not, our institutions in the state of Mississippi are going to get left behind. All right, final segment of the show brought to you by the fine folks at Portico. Brooks Bryan is also my friend. If he's my friend, he's your friend too. I like Brooks Bryan a lot. I appreciate him being a diamond dog and doing what was necessary to get us to Omaha. I told you guys before he robbed a home run against Washington to get us to the College World Series. And for that reason, and that reason alone, you owe it to yourself to reach out to Brooks. Because Brooks is a guy, too, that believes in making Starkville a great place to live. Mississippi State, a big part of his life. Starkville as well. Brooks, part of a great group. It's brought this wonderful residential development to our city. It's Portico. Very easy to get to, off 82 on a 12, very first right. Will take you to Portico. It's 1.1 miles away from campus. And it's on the convenient side of campus, right? You're not on the business side. You're on the residential side. Pretty cool deal. Not going too far from that neighborhood market. And there's some other businesses that are going to be opening up out in that area. Be very convenient for you. Phase 1 completely sold out. Working on Phase 2 now. Getting some work done this week, I believe, out there on the roads. Going to start pouring some slabs. There are some other lots that are still available, so you can pick your lot, you can pick your house plans, and have a say in your future home. Whether it be your primary residence, perhaps it's your ball game retreat, maybe it's your future retirement home. Good options for you out there. Working with good people in a great location. Give Brooks a call today at 601-416-8075. Again, that's 601-416-8075. If you need the number and you lose it, message me. I'm happy to send it to you. Happy to do it. I've told you guys before, if I was moving to Starkville now, I would move to Portico. The convenience to campus, the new construction, it's very appealing. You owe it to yourself to do a little research and reach out to our friend Brooks Bryan. make Portico your next move. All right, let's end with some baseball. And guys, these college baseball polls, they give us something to talk about. I don't agree with a lot of them, just so you guys know. I think D1 baseball is probably the best rankings. And part of that, too, is those guys get out and go. Those guys get out and go cover games. I have a lot of respect for them. And so I use their rankings. I think those are the best rankings for next year. It's just how things should work, in my opinion. So we're going to talk about some rankings today, just because I think it's important, and plus it's baseball, and I love talking baseball. So let's go with collegiate baseball. They have released their poll today of top 25 teams. I guess it actually goes to 50. We're going to start at 25 and work our way upwards. So number 25, North Carolina, finished last year with a 28-27 record. I like this North Carolina program. Don't know what's next for them, but I think this is a program that could surprise in the ACC. Our friends from UVA, Virginia, ranked 24. They lose a lot, though. They lose a lot, but they do return a couple of big-time pitchers. And so that will be interesting to see if they can kind of capitalize on that. Number 23 is Miami. Miami came in here for a regional 2 years ago and really expected them to kind of make the jump the next year. They didn't. Miami is still Miami, though. They'll always be hanging around the top 25. I think that's probably a good spot for them. Arizona ranked 22nd. I actually think even though this team, won in the Supers last year, they bounced Ole Miss. They lose a ton. Jay Johnson moves on. He took some of Arizona's best players with him to Baton Rouge. I am not a big Pac-12 baseball fan. I watch it a lot, though. Like when we get home from Duty Noble, I'll go back and watch Pac-12 baseball. I think Arizona is probably a team this year that probably struggles to make the tournament because new staff, and then you lose some frontline players. And so how do you make that up? 22 actually seems a little bit ambitious. Oregon at 21. There was some time last year people thought Oregon might make a run to Omaha. Didn't work out. They're 21st. Our friends at Arkansas coming in at 20. And let me just tell you this right now, that is too low. That is too low for Arkansas. They lost a lot. They're going to bring a lot back. And they are so good in their own ballpark. They're going to win a ton of games. Probably be in a hosting situation again this year. Dave Van Horn, arguably the best college baseball coach in America. The guy's done it everywhere he's been. Hard-nosed coach. Blue-collar approach to everything. I think Arkansas is too low at 20. I also think the number 19 team, and this may surprise you, I think they're too low, and that's the Ole Miss Rebels. Now, here's the deal with them. I don't think they're a top 10 team. I think they're probably mid-teens because they're going to be able to swing it. You're talking to our friends in the college baseball scouting and pro baseball scouting community. I see Ole Miss is going to be able to swing it as well as everybody. The issue is going to be pitching. You got Derek Diamond coming back. He was your Sunday guy. And there were times he was really good, but he was kind of up and down. Had the back injury last year. But what do they do without Nikhazy, right? Doug was outstanding for them last year. And then, they lose their Friday night and Saturday night guys, and then you're moving your Sunday guy to Friday. They had some transfers in, so we'll see. But they're going to be able to win some softball games. What I mean by that is games where teams run out of pitching are going to favor Ole Miss because they're going to be able to swing it. UCLA at 18, 37, and 20. That seems to be about right. UC Santa Barbara, they were really hot last year. I don't know if you can maintain that. They got them at 17 in the preseason. Our friends, the Chips from Central Michigan, 16, probably win their league this year again. The problem with Central Michigan is they just don't have the pitching talent to get over the hump up there. They're a really good mid-major team, and when they get to the end of a talent cycle, they can win some games and kind of upset some people. I just don't know if they have enough. Number 15, Louisiana Tech. Tech was really strong down the stretch last year. And there was talk that Tech might play their way into a hosting opportunity and then advance. They weren't able to do that. They ended up hosting, I guess it was Alabama, wasn't it? memory escapes me. But, listen, Tech is a much better program than it has been. And I'm surprised that Lane Burroughs didn't get more interest. But Louisiana Tech, with the new stadium, they put some money behind that program. They will do really well recruiting the I-20 corridor. They'll do really well there. On into Texas, they'll get over into Mississippi, and they've done a good job with Mississippi junior colleges. So 15 seems a bit high, but I could see them, playing their way into a potential hosting situation again. UC Irvine, the Anteaters there at 14, they're always around. It's a solid program. But they're a team, too, that, they need frontline pitching. TCU at 13, I think that's a bit high. TCU, of course, was a top 8 national seed last year, the first national 8 to be eliminated last year. You lose Schlossnagle. And they were kind of at the end of a talent cycle, too. They returned some pieces, but they're not the team they were a year ago. And that's the thing, too. The Big 12 was not good last year. And TCU kind of benefited from the fact that the bottom half of that league was abysmal. Number 12, Florida State at 12. I don't know. They went 31-24 last year and ended up in that regional with Ole Miss. I didn't think that Ole Miss should have worried about that in the least. I think Florida State is a team, too, that has kind of lost a bit of its identity, still trying to find it. Coach Martin is retired. They're coming along, and some people tell me they've got some young bats. So they're optimistic for the future. So that seems to be about right. Georgia Tech, 31-25, that is too high. There's no way that team is better than Ole Miss and Arkansas. They're not. 6 games above 500 last year. And, again, they play in a league that is a pretty good baseball league. And they always seem to have pitching. They never seem to have those bats that scare you away. Number 10, Notre Dame. We'll see. They lost a ton. They were a team that was kind of built to win last year. Great coaching staff up there. Link Jarrett and those guys have done phenomenal. I think Notre Dame baseball is probably back. 10 seems a bit optimistic. Your Bulldogs at number 9, which I think is an absolute joke. All the way down at 9, especially when you hear some of the teams that are ahead of them. You're defending national champions, 9 in the poll. And you say, well, they lost Tanner Allen and Rowdy Jordan. That's true, but you return basically everybody else. Will Bednar, of course, down the stretch we had one consistent starting pitcher. And so Landon Sims goes into that role this year, and maybe Preston Johnson goes into Saturday. We'll see. Foxhall will figure it out. This is a team that early on will kind of have to figure some things out, pitching-wise. But number 9 is too low. Number 8, East Carolina, and that's part of the issue right there. There is no way you can, even on paper, you can tell me East Carolina is a better team than Mississippi State. Absolutely not. Oklahoma State at 7, and again, they're not better than Mississippi State either. 36-19-1 last year. But Oklahoma State is a good program. And I think at this point it is easy to say that they run that state. They are one of the best teams in the Big 12. What does that mean kind of going forward? Number 6, Florida, 38-22. Florida got hot late. They returned a lot of pieces. I think Florida is a top 10 team, especially if they can find 1 or 2 pitchers. And they always seem to have that. Sully is a pitching coach by trade. They'll have pitching. They also have most of the offensive players back last year. I do think Florida is a top 10 team, and I do think Florida is a favorite in the SEC. Matter of fact, I think they will win the SEC East. Number 5, Stanford. Dave and those guys got a good program out there. And, there was some talk last year that they should have been a top 8 national seed. They come up a little bit short, but they return a lot. So it makes sense. I would say right now they are the odds-on favorite to win the Pac-12. Makes perfect sense to me. So even a top 10 team, I think that's probably fair when you look at what's returning. Number 4, Texas Tech. And again, that team is not better than Mississippi State. They're not. And we're prepared to go get on the field and prove it whenever they're ready. Of course, Tech last year gets the number 8 against Stanford. And, it just didn't work out well for Texas Tech. And I'm a Tim Tadlock fan. But they're a team, too, that they're a lot better in their ballpark than they are on the road. They're a little bit like Arkansas. They're kind of a poor man's Arkansas. And when they find pitching, they're really good. But they also kind of benefit from being in a Big 12 league that's kind of been down the last couple of years. I don't think that they are a favorite to win the Big 12. I think that is clearly Texas. But I don't think Texas Tech is a top 10 team. They may be early in the polls, but they're not. And so here is one of the things, too, it's interesting to me about one of the flaws in this poll. So we have Arizona ranked as a top 25 team, and all their best players went to LSU. We have LSU ranked number 3. LSU ranked, and that's on reputation. If you saw LSU play last year, and let's be honest, and nobody will ever confirm this, but you and I both know, LSU made the tournament last year as an at-large as a favorite of Paul Mainieri. You know that's true. There were a lot of teams obviously still in contention, and you go with the nostalgia factor. Paul Mainieri's been good for the game of baseball, even though he owned us for years, but you can't knock the fact that he and his family have done a lot for college baseball over the years. But LSU at number 3 is a joke. Do I think LSU will be a great team this year? I think they're a really good team this year. I don't know what's going to happen pitching-wise. They had the big guy transfer in from Arizona, but you saw what they had to piece together with last year. They have some injuries. Next thing you know, they get into that bullpen, and it gets away from them. And LSU had every opportunity to play their way into the tournament last year, and then they didn't. Like, they kept giving the tournament committee, the selection committee, every opportunity to vote against them. LSU one of the last teams in the tournament and didn't close out strong, finished 13 games above 500. Is LSU a top 10 team at season's end? I don't know if I'm ready to go that yet. They're not a top 10 team right now. Number 2, and this is the biggest joke in the poll, Vanderbilt at number 2. Are you kidding me? So tell me that you don't follow college baseball without telling me you don't follow college baseball. Vanderbilt at number 2. Are you kidding me? Honestly, are you serious? Vanderbilt at 2? It's like they just want social media traffic. Oh, yeah, no. Vanderbilt is not number 2. Matter of fact, Vanderbilt, and here's a hot take for you, Vanderbilt might be the 3rd best team in the East. Maybe 4th. If Georgia can find a little offense, Vanderbilt isn't even close to being the number 2 team in the country. At best, they're the number 2 team in the SEC East, and certainly not in the SEC overall. I submit to you right now that Arkansas, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, all better than Vanderbilt. Florida, better than Vanderbilt. But Vanderbilt's number 2? Oh, well, last year was an outlier. No, they lost in an national championship game, and look at what they're losing. And listen, I love Carter Young as a player. I do. I think he is an outstanding player. But he got exposed down the stretch last year. He has a hole in his swing. He can't handle the fastball in. Look at what he did in the postseason against elite pitching, against elite coaching staff. You don't think that everybody that plays Vanderbilt's going to see that? Now all of a sudden you start cheating that inside 4-seamer. Next thing you know, that 2-seamer is a strike on the corner. And you're going to sit there and look at it. You can't hit that. You can't cheat inside and then be able to protect outside. It just doesn't work that way against the pitching in this league. So Vanderbilt at number 2 is a complete joke. I don't even have Vanderbilt in the top 15, in my personal opinion. You look at, well, Steve, they recruited well. And listen, there's always some names we don't know. That's honest to goodness truth. But you don't lose 2 first-round draft picks as pitchers and get better as a staff. Doesn't happen. We knew last year they didn't have a 3rd starter. We saw it. People forget we beat them, and beat them to death in a national championship series. So Vanderbilt at number 2 is a joke, an absolute joke. Number 1, Texas. Not surprised by this at all. Texas loses a couple pieces, but they will be the class of the Big 12. They also have pitching back, and you say, well, Steve, they did lose a couple big arms. They did, but you know what? Those games between Mississippi State and Texas last year were classic games. And who knew? Who knew how great that was going to end up being? And we ended up playing them, 4 times last year? Maybe 3 times. Yeah, 4 times. But the reality of it is we played those guys. Nobody should know more about Texas than Mississippi State. I said last year, within a week of us winning the College World Series, that Texas is probably your number 1 team next year. They are. And I think that's fair. And I think everybody in college baseball, they'll be a consensus number 1. I think you could make a conversation against everybody else in the poll in some respects. I think Texas right now is the most complete team in college baseball. And I think the fact that Vanderbilt is in the conversation at all is an absolute travesty. Absolute travesty. Not to say that Vanderbilt's not going to win some games. They are. They're a good team. But they're not the number 2 team in America. It's not even close. And it's a shame to me that we're not playing them this year. That's what I wish we had a chance to get those guys at Duty Noble Field. But I don't think the East is going to be nearly as easy as it has been. That's the thing. Vanderbilt, as great as they have been, have gotten the break because they have had the opportunity to play Kentucky. They've had the opportunity to play South Carolina while they've been down. Missouri, they get to play them 3 times a year. Well, now all of a sudden, maybe the window's closing a little bit there in the East. Tony Vitello Tony is a great coach. I know Tennessee was old last year. They're going to be competitive. They're a team that could take a game or two from Vanderbilt. Florida, going to be competitive. Georgia, going to be competitive. For years, it was basically Vandy, Florida, and then everybody else. Well, now all of a sudden, the middle of the pack is getting better. And I'm excited to talk a little college baseball with you guys. So that's their poll. And again, I disagree with it. Sponsored by Big League Chew. Used to have that a lot when I was a kid. That is their preseason poll. Came out today. Others will follow. We'll talk about that too. But go ahead and be prepared to see Texas at or near the top of just about everybody's college baseball poll. But Mississippi State at 9 is a joke. That is really not a good pick. And I don't think there's anybody out there that knows much about college baseball that would agree with that. I don't think there's any question about that. I think that is I think Mississippi State is a top 10 team. I think 9 is I'd probably had a Bulldogs 6, maybe 5, maybe. But at the end of the day, that's the thing about polls, right? The only one that counts is the last one. And we have a tournament to decide that. It's not a matter of opinion. So as we saw last year, a lot of people liked us a lot, but didn't pick us to win an AFL championship. I'm not saying we're going to win it either, but we have a real chance to get back to Omaha, and then we'll see how things go. But I like our team. I look forward to getting back on the field. But there you go. There's some college baseball talk for you today. Look forward to being with you guys soon. It's been a really long show today. Covered a lot of ground. I want to thank you guys for your support of the Boneyard all these many years. And again, obviously, now Dogpile and I are going to be here by Christmas. They're telling us next month, and then we'll get books out to you. Have an actual delivery date probably within a week, once everybody gets back from holiday break. And these are the things that irritate me to no end. It's like, we do our part. I did my part, publisher did their part, and then the printer sends an email last week kind of apologizing for all the stuff. But the reality of it is, you guys are going to have books, and you guys have been so great. I've probably gotten 200 messages from people asking me for an update. And the reality of it is it's going to be next month. And so I did my part, and they basically assured us it would be no problem to get it before Christmas. And then here we are. We're not going to have it before Christmas. And I hate it because I know many of you were excited to have it. But we will have it next month. God forbid any other delays. But they tell us everything is good to go, and they'll get us going. And matter of fact, we're already having to think about the second printing because so many of you have pre-ordered the book, and that's at dogpilethebook.com. And I'm actually headed down to Jackson tomorrow to sign a bunch of books. Some of you have ordered, Flim Flam, Alpha Dogs, Stark Villains, so they can get those things out in the mail to you in hopes that you get it in time for Christmas. So I'll be doing that tomorrow. If you're looking for Stark Villains gear, you can find it at starkvillains.com. But as always, I look forward to being back with you guys on Wednesday. We'll have a lot to talk about as always. Going to see if I can't find some more transfer portal names for you guys too, and we'll talk some recruiting. But until then, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.